Hi again, everybody. It's the Dr. Tree Fruit and Don podcast. I'm Don Seifert. I'm here with Dr. Kari Peter. Say hi, Kari.
Hi there.
Dr. Greg Krawcheck. Say hi, Greg.
Hello.
And Dr. Shan Kumar. Say hi, Sean.
Hello, everyone.
It is Tuesday, March 31st. We are almost in April, almost April Fool's Day. But this is not a joke. We have plenty of fun things to talk about today. Kari, if you'd like to go first, why don't you get us rolling?
Okay, folks. Uh, we are at the beginning of the season. Trees have broken dormancy here down in south central Pennsylvania. I'm really seeing probably getting close, if not, we're at half-inch green tip down here in Adams County. And so, just as a reminder, with green tip, with breaking dormancy, this is when the apple scab spores awaken, are start to be mature and ready to be released from those overwintering leaves. So far this season, we've already had a kind of a apple scab infection event last Thursday, Friday. However, I'm not too worried about that because it sounds like everyone had covered up with copper at that point. So copper would have been protecting you. So it's nothing to worry about, I believe, at that point. Also, as a reminder, apple scab spores, the mature spores don't all release at once. They gradually trickle out and then they peak around late pink bloom and then they drastically fall off at petal fall. And so right now we're at as far as disease pressure, low disease pressure, because the amount of inoculum out there is not terribly high. It's the nature of how apple scab works. We've monitored apple scab for many years, and it's the same trend. They trickle out in the beginning, it peaks with the max number of spores at bloom, and then it falls off. So right now, we can be conservative, which is why I want to emphasize that even though we had a scab infection event last Thursday, Friday, according to the models, I'm not too worried about it because everyone should have been covered up with our copper by then. This week, though, with the really warm temperatures, the green tissue is advancing. So this is vulnerable green tissue now. And right now, the models are saying April 1st and 2nd for a scab infection event. However, we know how Mother Nature works. So this may or may not occur, or there may be thunderstorms that pop up because of the warm temperatures we're having. And at this time, because of those said warm temperatures, we only need 6 hours of leaf wetness. So those thunderstorms could easily trigger an apple scab infection event with just 6 hours of leaf wetness. With that said, people should be probably getting out there and covering up, and you can be conservative at this time of year. Here at Freck, what I'm recommending is a tank mixing a rain-fast mancozeb plus a micronized sulfur. So 3 pounds of 3 pounds to the acre of the rain-fast mancozeb, whatever of your choosing, whether it's Roper Rain Shield, Dithane Rain Shield, Manzate Pro Stick, just some kind of rain-fast mancozeb, because the longevity of that will pay off, especially if we're getting frequent rain events over a period of days. And then sulfur. Sulfur is another good broad spectrum, especially micronized sulfur, because it will disperse a lot more easily and cover the green tissue much better. As far as the rates at this time of year, I'd say anywhere from probably 6 to 10 pounds per acre of the micronized sulfur. You don't have to go too extreme with it, especially when you're tank mixing with the mancozeb. You can also tank mix mancozeb and psyllium, or just use mancozeb by itself. Again, you can be conservative. There's no need to panic as far as seeing the green tissue and getting out there. Disease pressure is on the lower side because the number of spores aren't out there and to the extreme. Now, for folks that may be a little more south in here, and definitely I know there are areas that are blooming south of here, but you might be at tight cluster. So tight cluster might be creeping up on you. And just as a reminder, with tight cluster, this is when powdery mildew starts. So we need to be paying attention to these dry days surrounding tight cluster. So options you can use is, again, use your rain-fast mancozeb, because that will take care of any scab that can pop up when there's a rain event. So you could focus on having more of a powdery mildew focus for some of the products. But some good products that are good for both scab and powdery mildew are like Axios or Sevia, Procure, If you really do struggle with, those are just a couple that I'm naming off the top of my head. If you really struggle with powdery mildew, you may want to go with something stronger. You could go for a high rate of sulfur of mancozeb and then a high rate of micronized sulfur. Go up to 10 pounds, maybe 12 pounds per acre if you're struggling with powdery mildew. For the organic folks, sulfur is your best friend, but you can also use potassium bicarbonate, or EcoSwing is also another good option. But tight clusters that time, don't let it sneak up on you. Last year was a really tough year for powdery mildew. I think the year before was a tough year for powdery mildew. We often forget about these dry weather days, that they are great weather for another disease. It may not be a good disease for scab, but it's a good disease for powdery mildew. And so it's something you need to be juggling. We'll probably talk about it again in the next episode with the rate of this warm weather and how fast the phenology is going. But it's just for people to be on their toes. So again, just as a reminder, it sounds like, or I should say, the models are saying April 1st and 2nd for an apple scab infection event. But when I look at the radar, the percent chance of precipitation keeps fluctuating. However, be prepared for it and also be prepared for the days after. So April 3rd, 4th, and 5th are also showing some very unstable weather, especially on the 5th right now. When I was looking at the weather, it's showing almost like close to an 80% chance of rain on the 5th. So whatever you are doing this week to prepare for scab, it'll probably will cover you for whatever may happen over the weekend. And then next week is a different story. So we will cover next week when it comes. But let's just look through from now until April 5th. This is when I'm living 5 days at a time right now. So when it comes to the weather and conditions. And so, yes, so that's it. So just we are off to the races officially. I mean, Mother Nature's ready to go. I thought she was going to give me a break, but alas, she is not. As I sit here sweating in my office when it's, I think, pushing 80 degrees outside right now. So, Don, any questions or thoughts? Did I miss anything?
No, I think you covered all the bases. I obviously have been doing the phenology stuff on Mondays, and that should be posted today of the recording of this. Uh, and I recorded all my phenology stuff, and then I went, well, this is going to be useless by the time it actually gets reported because it's going to take off like a shot the second I leave the field. So yeah, that's kind of I think where we're at weather-wise. It's whatever we say today or tomorrow is going to be gone by the day after. So
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, right now our peaches aren't really moving, neither is our tart cherry. So, I have really nothing to report on tart cherries or peaches. I do know apricots are blooming out there. I've seen them. Hopefully, there'll be a crop, but we have had some precarious low temps. But from the disease perspective, this is, this is an event to be concerned about. But again, you can still be conservative with these conditions that we're seeing. But that will all change very soon if these warm weather continues. So,
awesome. Thanks, Gary.
all right.
Greg.
Oh, well, the spring is here. Actually, some of the bugs are flying. We got, because we're monitoring for a lot of different species, we got the first red-banded and spotted tendon from leaf miners in our traps, pheromone traps already. Those two pests, I mean, I don't know a single location where they are problem, but because they overwinter as adults, they are the first one to show up in the spring. So yes, we officially got them last week in the traps. So something is flying. Something that is probably more interesting is the oriental fruit moth and codling moth. The general rule is that oriental fruit moth starts flying around the bloom of peaches and apple, and codling moth supposed to start flying when apples are in bloom. To put it in perspective, last year in 25, oriental fruit moth started flying on April 14, which is 2 weeks from now. And at the time, we were at about 290 plus degree days, base 45. Where are we right now? We are at us, and this is according to NUA, we are at 226 degree days today, and we will be at 325 by Sunday. Well, basically, if the degree days are good indicator, and this is not the only factor that influence when the moths are flying, we should have oriental fruit moth flying sometime later this week. So will this be the biofix? Well, yes and no. The reason why I'm a little bit reluctant to say, oh yeah, we will have them, is that basically starting from Easter Sunday, the temperature, at least according to forecast, and Kari mentioned this number of times, forecast might change. Starting from Easter Sundays, the highs for the days are 59, 53, 63, 59, 65. Those are the highs for next week. If that holds, the chance of any OFM activity observed next week is almost zero. They will not be flying when it's that cold. It doesn't mean that they won't be there, but they won't respond to the pheromone, they won't be observable in the trap, and so on. So the lesson, well, put the traps out if you don't have it already. I talked about it last time. We really need those traps in the orchards now. See what happens, and then make a decision how important the flight that most likely will happen this Thursday, this Friday, maybe Saturday. You might see them on Easter Sunday because you will be, if you check traps on Sunday, you will be checking what actually happened on Saturday. And Saturday is supposed to be 81 according to the forecast. But then if we don't have any flight for another week, then the question is, when is the biofix? Are we worried about this 1, 2, 3% of moths that started flying earlier on, or we will define biofix as the continuous flight, which I think will start happening from Thursday, April 9th. I think the latest for the biofix, but again, I'm guessing, and you might say, well, you told us so. I don't know. I think we will have the continuous flight of OFM by the end of the week after Easter. End of that week. So we'll see what happens. Codling moth, our biofix last year was on April 29, on 28. At the time, we were at 313 degree days. Those degree days for codling moth use a different base than for oriental fruit moth, because for codling moth, the lower threshold is 50. For OFM, it's 45. So right now, we are at 142. By the end of this week, we're supposed to be at 216. So I think the earliest will be second part of April that we might start seeing codling moth. Saying this, having trap in the orchard, well, 0 is also a number, and it's nice to have zeros before you start catching something. Then you know that you really got the real biofix. So if you're putting OFM traps, or you have already them, maybe putting traps no later than by mid next week for codling moth is also a good idea. So this is for monitoring. Of course, you can add other traps, but traps for tufted should not go before the bloom on apples, oblique, few weeks after bloom on apples. I don't know how many people are really monitoring for borers, dogwood borer, peach tree borer, lesser peach tree borer. Those are less important. However, if someone is interested in the flight or see the potential problem, it might be good time to start thinking about it. Nothing really needs to be out before the bloom on apples other than this OFM and potentially codling moth. Everything else is kind of secondary. So that's about monitoring and how the weather can play tricks with us. What about stuff that we don't monitor using traps? Well, I guarantee you that this week, if you go to the pear orchards, there will be plenty of Persilla adults flying in the orchards. What can be done about it? If they flying, they also mate, and Persilla can start laying eggs. This is really this old practice that we recommend for a number of years, that this is the time that you should go and spray with oil. Anytime, anything around 1.25% oil sprayed on pears right now will help to reduce the number of eggs that females are going to deposit. It will not eliminate them completely, but will reduce, and this will help later on during the season when we try to have those generations synchronized better, and then whatever we do against Persilla will be more effective. So if you didn't do so, spraying oil right now is a very good thing. Well, again, will it rain tomorrow or will not it rain tomorrow? Depends which forecast you look. Some forecast saying that it's gonna be rain for 20 hours starting today at midnight. But again, it's a forecast thing. Anyway, spraying oil will reduce the number of eggs. It might also kill some eggs. But if you can squeeze one oil and then within 5, 7 days, oil plus pyrethroid, but the pyrethroid has to happen before you got to the white bud stage on pears. Then you might have a much better results in controlling Persilla later on during the season. It's all about making the generation more synchronized through the season, and this way making everything else working better. On apples, well, oil also is not a bad choice if you know that you had some European red mites, that you had some aphids, that maybe potentially you had some Jose scale. Then going with the oil, and in this case, again, the closer you get to the tight cluster, to the pink, the concentration should be lower, but anywhere from 2-3% to 1% is a good shot. It will help. It will keep those pests that I listed in check. This is not the most effective spray, but will help. Will help later on. Do you need to spray any insecticides? I keep saying this for a number of years, that with the assortment of different products that we have available that can be sprayed at petal fall on apples, basically other than European apple sawfly, which in most cases is not a problem, everything else can be controlled at petal fall. So I would not too worry about spraying insecticides on apples before after petal fall. And this is not only because it will obviously help to protect bees and native pollinators, but there's basically no need. And I said this also a number of times that you don't need to kill the same insect twice. And most of them will, that are present that you're trying to control now will also be there at petal fall. That's why I think petal fall spray is the one that really we need to prepare and be ready. Um, Saying this, there is this new product I mentioned last time called Zivalgo. I don't know what the pricing is for it, but petal fall might be a perfect time to use this product as it should help us with plum curculio, European apple sawfly, oriental fruit moth, stink bugs. Well, it even has mites on the label. I don't buy that recommendation. However, it is on the label. So even if this is only a suppression, this might be all you need at petal fall if you worry about mites, European red mites. So basically, this might be a good time to try it. It might be a good time to use it. Again, I'm not advertising for this product. If you go with your regular Assail at 8 ounces at petal fall or Avant plus Agrimec plus 2-3 ounces of Assail mixture, they are as good as. Zivalgo is not a silver bullet, but it provides a new mode of action, effective mode of action, as effective as the products we have. The one thing about Zivalgo, and we're gonna talk about it when we go to the Twilight meetings, which I'm assuming Dan or Kari will mention them a little bit earlier, later. Uh, Zivalgo is the first insecticide with the new model for the label. And this is the one that you actually have to go on the internet. You have to go through the at least two different steps to make sure that at the moment you are applying Zivalgo, you are legal to use Zivalgo. That's all about Endangered Species Act, ESA, and all the new insecticides are required to have this kind of restriction. So if you can't use internet, I think you cannot use Zivalgo. But this is something that if you go to the label, you read through the label, it will basically give you steps, what needs to be done, how, and so on. But this is something to remember. Other than this, one more thing that maybe on apples that if you really had problem that you detected at harvest, it might be a good time right now to go against San Jose scale, but this is very rare situation. Most of the people don't have a problem, and oil will help. Will not provide excellent control, but will help. And San Jose can be also controlled later before it actually attack fruit. So this is one of those pests that yes, it can, but there is also time to control it later. So with this, that's all updates I have, unless there are any questions.
No, I think that covered pretty much everything, and really appreciate the update as always. So, and why don't you give us your report?
Sure. Uh, Thanks, Don. I just wanted to give everyone a report about the phenology and where we are at in different parts of the state. Finally, after a lot of cold weather, we are in the season, so to speak. We have warm temperatures all this week and next week, and things are going to move quite fast. And so we were already at green tip close to about a week ago in Adams County. We are slowly getting into, and a few days later, I think in Berks as well. And this week, we are slowly getting into green tip in our region in State College area. And I know that in the western part of the state and northern part of the state, in Erie, northeast, that it'll still be about a week or week and a half more in order to see green tip, depending on the temperatures that you've had. But that's where we're at. And for peaches, at the southern part of the state, some of the varieties we already see them at pink, and so very soon the peaches will be into thinning season, so to speak. So if you're using thinners for peaches, the only registered chemical thinner is a seed, and so you can use a seed with rates between 300 to 600 ppm, which is 10 to 20 ounces of the product for thinning, starting from pink to petal fall in peaches. It So first look at the damage you've had based on damages that we've seen in different parts of the state. On average, we're seeing around 30 to 50% damage from the winter and from the cold that we've had. That means that you still need to take off quite a bit more in your peaches, because you need to set about 15%, 10 to 15% of your crop for a successful peach crop. So you still need to thin, and lower rates of a seed will are safe to use. So you can use something like 300 or 400 ppm, or 10, 12 ounces, 13 ounces of product to the acre. And of course, based on some of the work that we have done, increase the water volume that you spray per acre to about 100 to from 100 to 150 gallons, if you want to see a slightly additive effect of that increased water volume on thinning that we have observed. But for peaches, between 10 to 10 to 20 ounces of the product, I think would be good to use. We're slowly getting into pink, so they might be ready for thinning sometime next week, depending on your location. So you can apply anywhere from pink to petal fall. I think applying at full bloom will be best for peaches and peach thinning. And so if you have a large varied block, then try to select the variety that blooms somewhere in the middle of that time frame. And so you'll have varieties right from pink to petal fall, but you'll have the variety that sort of blooms in the middle at full bloom, and then you can spray the entire block, and you can cover the entire block in that time frame in that way. So that's for peaches. For apples, we're still a little bit away from pink and bloom, and but still, it's time to, I think about your blossom thinning strategy for this year. Again, check for damage. Check if your kings are alive for some of the varieties, because of the cold that we had about I think at this point it was 2 weeks ago. We had a warm spell, and then we went back cold. In Rock Springs, I know that we went to about 10 Fahrenheit one night, and so we lost a lot of the kings in some of the varieties. So make sure you check that and adjust your thinning strategy accordingly. But it's good to think about your blossom thinners, your lime sulfur 2% and stylet oil 2%, as well as think about ATS, and think about ordering that and having it ready, because it'll still be a couple of weeks or a few weeks depending on how the temperature goes, but best to be ready with them as for blossom thinning your apple crop as well. But that is the update. Hopefully you're getting through pruning and sort of getting through the final stages of pruning your different apple blocks. I'm sure we're all still have quite a bit left to do of pruning, and you're all are getting to it, especially as the temperatures are getting better. But that's that. As far as fertilization, I think that a lot of fertilization, especially nitrogen and liming especially, you can start now. You can lime your soils. You can also do it in the fall, and because it gives it more time to sort of get incorporated more. And so if the recommendations ask for lime, then you can lime your soil. Make sure that for Honeycrisp you're liming only with dolomitic lime. Sorry, with calcitic lime, not dolomitic lime, because dolomitic lime contains magnesium, and you don't want to be adding more magnesium to your soil, especially in Honeycrisp blocks. And so use calcitic lime when liming your soil. And as we get closer to bloom, I think you can start with your fertilizer applications, especially micronutrients like boron, which is very important for during bloom and pollination and fruit set. And so we're still about a week and a half away from starting some of our major fertilizations for the year. But we can always get started with lime, I think, and with new plantings as well. I think people are starting to plant new blocks in. The temperatures, the weather looks great this week and next to get some of our new plantings in. And so that's something to think about. About 7 to 10 days uh, pre, you can apply glyphosate or something, some burn down herbicide to clear off the strips, and then 7 to 10 days later, you can plant your crop. Make sure if for new blocks you're incorporating your lime and other nutrients like monoammonium phosphate or diammonium phosphate to get your phosphorus in, because phosphorus takes time to be incorporated into the soil and takes a few years for it to be taken in by the tree as well. So make sure you do all that and then plant your trees, and follow up again with pre-emergent herbicides that you can use, so that you're getting your weeds under check early on as well. Uh, and that's it for me as updates. I'm sure you all are checking almost every day as to where your trees are at. And this week and next week, expect them to move somewhat quickly because of the warm temperatures that we have. But as in the next 2 weeks, I don't see any concern for frost, particularly in our region, based on the temperatures that I'm seeing. So hopefully, fingers crossed that they stay that way until we get through bloom and fruit set. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks for the update, Sean. Kari, are you doing the spring meetings or am I doing the spring meetings?
Well, so we don't have all of the spring meetings finalized.
Oh,
So
great.
so we aren't ready to advertise the spring meetings yet. We're still in the process of finalizing a couple
I
locations.
mean, we have dates. We have
Yes,
dates,
yes. Oh, okay.
not the
Okay,
location.
so location we can give dates. So I've got my list up, so I will be happy to share where people need to be putting a mental note and maybe a pin in their calendar. So first, on Tuesday, April 28th, we'll be in Lancaster. And so this will be occurring from 6 to 8 p.m., just to let folks know. That's the typical time. On Wednesday, April 29th, we'll be somewhere in Adams County. On Thursday, April 30th, we're going to be somewhere in Franklin County. On Monday, May 4th, we're going to be somewhere in the central Susquehanna Northeast region. So we aren't sure yet, but that's the location. Um, on Tuesday, May 5th, we're going to be in the Southeast region and we do have a location, and that's going to be Linvilla Orchards in Media, Pennsylvania. So that's on Tuesday, May 5th. On Wednesday, May 6th, we're going to be in the western part of the state, and we do have a location for that, and that's going to be Dawson's Orchards in Enon Valley. And then Thursday, May 7th, in the morning, this is going to be a crazy day, but in the morning, we're going to be in Erie County at Birch Farms Country Market. And that will probably be a like 10 to 12. 10 a.m. it's going to be a morning meeting, and the northwestern corner of the state, those folks, they know the drill, so that's going to be a morning meeting. And then we're going to get in our car and we're going to be driving to Bedford County, and so we're going to actually have our Appalachian region meeting that evening, early evening, in Bedford County. So we're actually knocking out two meetings in one day on Thursday, May 7th. And so that meeting that's going to be in Bedford, the Bedford County region, will be a smidge earlier. Probably won't be at 6, it'll probably be at 5 or 5:30. Just because those of us have been traveling all day and the previous day will want to get home before midnight. So back to Biglerville before midnight. So that is the schedule at the moment as far as days. A couple locations have been finalized, but as it becomes finalized, we will share with you folks with every podcast when we get the meetings, spring meetings. So just stay tuned. But we definitely have the dates figured out. So
Awesome. Thanks for laying those out for everyone, Kari.
yep.
And I think that's all we've got.
Yes. And so since we've kicked off the season, we are, Don, don't correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to try to go on weekly schedules here
That is the
to
game
be
plan.
able, now that the season's here, we're going to get back on our typical regime of giving weekly updates. And so, and just to let folks know, this coincides on my end with weekly disease updates via email. And then I'm also doing alternative ways for folks that don't use email as well. So we're trying to get the information out as broadly as possible.
Great. So we will see you all next week. Say goodbye, everybody.
See you later. Good luck.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.